There are games children play to keep the darkness at bay. Some are make-believe, whispered under blankets with giggles and shivers. But some are deadly serious rules, learned not from stories, but from survival. Every night, as the house settled and the grown-ups' voices faded, Sam began the counting game. He was 8 years old, and he knew the rules by heart. He had to count to 100, slow and steady, before the shadow reached his bed. If he finished in time, the shadow slipped away, melting into the corners. If he didn't know what would happen, but he knew it would be bad. It started the winter after his family moved into the old house at the edge of town. His room was small, with peeling wallpaper and a window that rattled in the wind. But it was the space beneath his bed that mattered most. That's where the shadow lived. He first saw it on a night when the wind howled, and his parents were arguing downstairs. A shape, darker than the darkness, slid from beneath the bed slow, reaching, hungry. Sam's breath caught in his chest. Instinctively, he began to count, whispering the numbers into the hollow of his pillow. 1, 2, 3. The shadow paused, as if listening. He kept counting, voice trembling. By the time he reached 100, the shadow was gone. From then on, the game was real. Every night, as the clock struck midnight, the shadow would begin its crawl. Sam could feel the cold seep from under the bed, could see the inky tendrils stretching across the floor. He would squeeze his eyes shut and start to count, always slow, always careful. Rushing made the shadow move faster. Pausing made it stop and hover, inches from his mattress. Some nights, he wished he could call for his parents, but the rules were clear. No sound but counting, no movement but breathing. If he broke the rules, the shadow would know. On his 9th birthday, Sam's courage faltered. He lost count at 73. Fear tangling his tongue, the shadow reached the bed, its hand rising, long-fingered and cold. He gasped, heart hammering, and started over. 1, 2. The shadow froze, hand inches from his face. He counted, voice hoarse, at 100. The shadow vanished, leaving only a chill behind. He never lost count again. Years passed. The counting game became a ritual, as natural as brushing his teeth or saying goodnight. He never told anyone. How could he explain that a shadow waited for him every night? That his safety depended on numbers whispered into the dark. One night, as he counted, Sam heard something new, a second voice, soft and echoing, counting with him. He dared not stop. He counted faster, the shadow moving quicker than ever before. 98, 99, 100. Silence. The next night, the second voice was gone, but the shadow lingered a little longer, its hunger sharper. Sam grew older, but the game never ended. Even as a teenager, he counted, just to be safe. The shadow never left. He wondered, sometimes, what would happen if he stopped, if he let the shadow win, but he never dared to find out. So every night, as darkness crept and the world grew quiet, Sam played the counting game, 1 to 100. 100 heartbeats between him and the thing beneath the bed. And every night, the shadow waited, listening, hungry for a single mistake. Have you ever wondered why, in the dead of night, time seems to slow, stretching each second into an eternity? Some say the clocks themselves are to blame, their hands moving in ways only the darkness understands. But there is one rule, older than the ticking itself: never look at the clock when you cannot move. For in that moment, when curiosity wins over fear, something ancient awakens. In the heart of a quiet neighborhood, where the street lamps flicker and the wind carries secrets through the trees, there lived a man named Walter. He was a creature of habit, his life measured by routines as precise as the gears in his grandfather's old mantel clock. Each night, he wound the clock, listening to the steady tick-tick-tick that filled the silence of his home. It was a comfort, a lullaby that soothed him into sleep. But one night, as the world outside was drowned in fog and the moon hid behind a veil of cloud, Walter awoke to a heaviness pressing down on his chest. His arms refused to move. His legs were stone. He tried to call out, but his mouth would not open. Only his eyes obeyed, wide with fear, searching the darkness for meaning. The clock on the mantel ticked on, its hands glinting in the faint light. Walter's mind raced. How long had he been trapped in this silent prison? Was it minutes or hours? He tried to remember the last time he had moved, but the memory slipped away. Lost in the fog of panic, he stared at the ceiling, willing himself to wake up, to break free. But the clock ticked on, somewhere in the house. A floorboard creaked. The sound was soft, almost gentle, but it sent a chill crawling down Walter's spine. He wanted to see the time, to anchor himself to reality. His eyes darted to the clock. The hands stood at midnight, or had they moved? He could not be sure. The darkness seemed to bend around the clock, swallowing its shape, twisting its edges. He blinked, trying to clear his vision, and that was when he saw it, a shadow, darker than the night, standing beside the clock. It did not move, did not breathe, but Walter felt its gaze, cold and heavy, settle on him. The room grew colder. The tick of the clock slowed, each beat echoing like a heartbeat in the silence. The shadow stretched, its form shifting, growing taller, wider, until it blotted out the clock entirely. Still, Walter could not move. He could only watch as the shadow glided across the room, silent as a grave. It stopped at the foot of his bed. Some say the shadow is the spirit of lost time, hungry for those who dare to seek it. Others believe it is a guardian, punishing those who cannot resist the lure of forbidden knowledge. But all agree the price of curiosity is steep. The shadow leaned over Walter, its face a void, empty and endless. He felt its breath, icy and unnatural, brush against his cheek. A voice, hollow and distant, whispered in his ear, "Do not look at the clock." The words echoed in his mind, growing louder, sharper, until they drowned out the ticking. He tried to scream, but the sound was swallowed by the darkness. The shadow reached out, its fingers long and thin, tracing the outline of Walter's face. Where it touched, his skin burned with cold. He closed his eyes, praying for morning, for release. But the shadow lingered, its presence filling the room. Time lost all meaning. Minutes stretched into hours, or perhaps it was only seconds. Walter could not be sure. He was trapped, suspended between night and day, between sleep and waking. When the first light of dawn crept through the curtains, the shadow vanished. Walter's body jerked awake, breathless and drenched in sweat. The clock on the mantel ticked on, its hands unchanged. He stumbled from his bed, legs trembling, and smashed the clock to pieces. But the ticking continued, echoing in his mind, a reminder of the rule he had broken. Some say the shadow marks those who look at the clock, following them from room to room, from dream to dream. Walter never slept in silence again. He filled his house with music, with laughter, with anything to drown out the ticking. But at night, when the world grew quiet, he could still hear it, the slow, steady beat of time, and the whisper that followed, "Do not look at the clock." And somewhere, in the hush before dawn, another restless soul's eyes drift toward the ticking hands, never knowing what waits in the shadow's gaze. Some dangers slip in quietly, wearing the face of sleep. Some are kept at bay, not by locks or alarms, but by the careful repetition of simple acts of ritual, learned by heart, performed without fail. For as long as she could remember, Nora had performed her bedtime ritual. She could not recall when it began, or who had taught her, only that she must do it, every night, in the same order. With nothing forgotten, the ritual was simple, but precise. First, place the glass of water on the nightstand, rim facing the window. Second, turn the pillow once to the cool side. Third, whisper her name 3 times into the darkness. Fourth, lay the small iron key beneath her pillow. Fifth, draw the curtains, but leave a finger's width open for the moonlight. Last, blow a kiss to the empty space at the foot of her bed. If she did it right, sleep would come deep and dreamless. If she missed a step, something would wait in the shadows, breathing slow and patient. Nora never told anyone about the ritual. It was a private thing, woven into the fabric of her nights. Sometimes, she wondered if it was silly, a superstition she should have outgrown. But, on the nights when she was tempted to skip a step, she remembered the stories her grandmother used to tell. Stories of the sleep demon thing that watched from the corners, waiting for a door to open. It could not enter unless invited by carelessness, by a forgotten act. One night, exhausted by a long day, Nora stumbled through the ritual. She set the water, turned the pillow, whispered her name. She drew the curtains, left the gap. But as she crawled into bed, her hand brushed her pillow, and she realized the iron key was missing. She sat up, heart pounding, searching the sheets, the floor, the nightstand. It was nowhere to be found. A chill swept through the room. The shadows seemed to deepen, pooling at the foot of the bed. Nora's breath caught. She remembered the last step blowing, a kiss to the empty space. She did it quickly, hoping it would be enough. But the ritual was broken. That night, sleep did not come. She lay awake, listening to the creaks of the house, the whisper of wind against the glass at the edge of her vision. Something moved, a shape darker than the night, tall and thin, with eyes that glinted in the sliver of moonlight. It stood at the foot of her bed, silent and watchful. Nora squeezed her eyes shut, pulling the blanket to her chin. She whispered apologies, promises to do better, to never forget again. The shape lingered, its presence heavy, the air thick and cold. It did not come closer, but it did not leave. Only as dawn crept through the gap in the curtains did it fade, dissolving into the morning light. Nora rose, trembling. She found the iron key beneath the dresser, cold and dusty. That night, and every night after, she performed the ritual with trembling care, each step deliberate, each motion precise. She never forgot again. Sometimes, as she drifted toward sleep, she felt the weight of unseen eyes watching from the foot of the bed, waiting, for the sleep demon is patient. It needs only a single, forgotten step, and it will always be there, just beyond the edge of light, listening for the smallest slip, the tiniest invitation. So each night, Nora performed her ritual, and each night, the darkness waited, just out of reach. What if the darkness in your room could breathe? What if, in the quiet hours before dawn, you weren't alone with your thoughts, but with something that listened, and waited, and learned the sound of your life? They say it begins with a sigh, a gentle exhale, not your own, echoing softly in the silence. At first, it's easy to dismiss, a trick of the ear, a draft beneath the door. But night after night, the sound returns, always just after the lights go out. You lie there, still and wary, listening to the hush of your own breath. And there it is, again, a second rhythm, slow and patient, woven into the darkness. A breathing shadow, hidden where the light cannot reach. Some nights, it lags behind, a half-beat slower than your own. Other times, it races ahead, shallow and eager, as if excited by your fear. But always, it listens, adjusting, learning your pattern. You try to ignore it, to convince yourself it's nothing. But soon, you can't sleep without hearing it. The rise and fall, the hush and sigh. Two sets of lungs in the same room. One night, as you lie awake, you realize the shadow's breathing is closer than ever. It matches you, breath for breath, Inhale, exhale, exhale. A perfect mirror. Your heart pounds. You hold your breath, desperate to break the rhythm. But the shadow waits, silent and patient. When you can't resist any longer, you gasp, and so does it. In perfect unison, the room grows colder. The air thickens, heavy with dread. You sense it now. At the edge of your Vijuna shape, coiled in the darkness, pressed close to your side. They say if your breathing ever syncs with the shadows, something terrible happens. A door opens, a boundary breaks, and the shadow steps in, no longer content to hide. So you lie there, night after night, fighting sleep, fighting the urge to breathe in time with the darkness, hoping the sun will rise before your rhythms become one. For once the shadow breathes with you, it never truly leaves. What keeps the darkness at bay when the world is silent and the night presses in from every side? Some say it's the warmth of a candle's flame, a fragile, flickering barrier between safety and something ancient, waiting just beyond the light. In a quiet town, where the shadows grew long and the wind whispered secrets through the trees, there was a rule passed down for generations. When dusk fell, a single candle was placed in the window. It must burn from the first hint of twilight until the sun's first golden rays. The candle's flame was not for comfort, nor for beauty. It was a warning, a promise. If the flame ever died before dawn, the demon would be free. They say the demon was once a man, twisted by grief and jealousy, until his soul became nothing but hunger. Banished by a desperate prayer, he was trapped in the darkness beyond the window, unable to cross the threshold so long as the flame burned. So, every night, the townsfolk watched the candle dot. They tended it with trembling hands, shielding it from the wind, feeding it fresh wax, never daring to look away for long. Sometimes, the demon would test their resolve, a sudden gust rattling the panes, a cold draft slithering beneath the door, a voice, soft and pleading, whispering from the shadows, "Let me in, just for a moment." But none dared answer. None dared let the flame die. One night, a traveler arrived, weary and unknowing. He saw the candle in the window, burning low, and thought nothing of it. As midnight crept in, the flame sputtered. The traveler, half asleep, reached for the matches, but they slipped from his grasp. The candle guttered, then vanished into smoke. The house grew cold. The shadows stretched and twisted. From the darkness beyond the window came a sound, soft at first, then growing, a scraping, hungry laugh. They found the traveler at dawn, eyes wide, mouth frozen in a silent scream. The candle was gone, but from that day on, a new candle burned in the window, tended by trembling hands, watched by wary eyes. For the demon is patient, and the night is long. So, when you see a candle burning in the darkness, remember the promise it keeps, and pray the flame lasts until morning. You're listening to Nocturnal Narrative Studio. If these haunting stories filled you with fear, kindly share your own frightening experiences in the comments section below. Keep your eyes peeled for our upcoming episode, where we have even more fearsome and spine-tingling tales planned for you. What if the thing meant to protect you became the very source of your fear? What if the charm above your bed, woven with feathers and hope, hid something that watched and waited and made its own rules for your sleep? They say that Dreamcatcher's web is more than decoration. It's a snare for nightmares, a shield against the darkness that slips in while you dream. But sometimes, a web catches more than it should. Sometimes, it traps something that shouldn't be there at all. In a quiet house, where the wind hummed through the eaves and old secrets lingered in the corners, a dream catcher hung above a restless sleeper. Each night, as the world faded and the hush of midnight crept in, the dream catcher's feathers would stir, though the air was still. At first, the dreams were peaceful, memories of laughter and sunlight, but soon, shadows crept in silent, watching, patient, a presence in the room, felt but never seen. Then came the paralysis, a weight pressing down, pinning the sleeper to the bed, eyes wide, heart pounding, unable to move or cry out, only able to stare at the dream catcher, swaying gently above. That's when the rules began. A voice, cold and soft, whispering from the tangled web. Do not blink more than 3 times. Do not look away from me. Do not try to speak. Each rule, a thread woven tighter around the sleeper's mind. Break a rule, and the shadows in the corners would shift. A chill would creep up the spine. The voice would grow sharper, closer, each word a hook dragging the sleeper deeper into fear. Some nights, the entity would test the limits, a feather brushing the cheek, a flicker of movement just beyond the edge of vision, a question whispered, daring the sleeper to answer. Those who obeyed the rules survived the night, waking with a gasp as the dawn broke and the paralysis faded. But those who faltered, who blinked too many times, looked away, or tried to scream, found the dreamcatcher's web empty in the morning, its feathers scorched, its threads torn, and the room colder than before. They say the entity moves on, seeking another dreamcatcher, another restless soul. It waits for the next set of rules to be broken. Tot comma comma. So, if you hang a dreamcatcher above your bed, watch for the signs, listen for the whispers, and when sleep paralysis comes, remember the rules, for some protections are a curse in disguise, and some nightmares, once caught, never let you go. Have you ever noticed how every important aspect of life comes with rules? Some written in bold letters, others whispered between friends, but the most crucial one, the final rule, is never shared, never explained, until you've already broken it. In the quiet town of Eldridge, nestled between ancient forests and mist-covered hills, the residents lived by a peculiar code, not laws enforced by badges and courtrooms, but rules passed down through generations, unquestioned and absolute. The kind of rules that kept the town peaceful, prosperous, and remarkably free of the tragedies that plagued neighboring communities. New residents received a small leather-bound book upon moving in, its pages filled with seemingly arbitrary instructions. Never leave laundry hanging after sunset. Always place a silver coin beneath your doormat on the first day of winter. Never pick the wild violets that grew along Blackwater Creek. Most newcomers followed these rules out of respect or curiosity, while others dismissed them as superstitious nonsense. But those who ignored them never stayed long in Eldridge. They would leave suddenly, their homes abandoned in the night, possessions still arranged as if they'd merely stepped out for a moment. Into this peculiar community arrived Dr. Eleanor Harlow, a rational woman of science who had accepted a position at the local medical clinic. She found the town charming, if somewhat old-fashioned, and the leather book of rules amusing rather than concerning. Folklore has its place, she told Mrs. Winters, the elderly woman who owned the boarding house where Eleanor was staying until she found a permanent home, but ideal in medicine, in facts. Mrs. Winters merely smiled, her weathered hands continuing to knit what appeared to be a scarf of unusual pattern. Facts are comforting, she agreed, until they aren't. Eleanor followed most of the rules, without thinking much about them. They were harmless enough, and it seemed easier to comply than to cause offense. She left coins beneath her doormat, avoided the violets, and made sure her laundry was indoors before the sun dipped below the horizon. She even began to find a certain rhythm in these rituals, a comforting structure to her days in Eldridge. The town embraced her, and she found herself invited to community gatherings, welcomed into homes for dinner, included in the gentle flow of life there. It was at one such dinner, hosted by the mayor and his wife, that Eleanor first heard mention of what the locals called the final rule. "Every family has one," explained the mayor's wife, refilling Eleanor's wine glass. "It's not written in the book. It's personal, specific to each bloodline or household." "How does one learn this rule?" Eleanor asked, curiosity piqued. The table fell silent, an uncomfortable weight settling over the previously jovial gathering. The mayor cleared his throat. "The hard way," he finally said. "Always the hard way." The conversation moved on, but Eleanor couldn't shake the unease that had crept into her mind. In the following weeks, she found herself watching the townspeople more carefully, noting the small rituals unique to each family. The Millers always touched the old oak tree in the town square when passing. The Chen family never used their front door on Tuesdays. The Blackwoods always carried a small pouch of dried herbs, which they would touch before entering any building. When she asked about these habits, she received the same answer each time: family tradition. As winter approached, Eleanor found a small house to rent. A charming cottage at the edge of town with a view of both the forest and the distant mountains. The previous owner had moved away suddenly, leaving most furnishings behind, which suited Eleanor perfectly. She settled in quickly, arranging her medical books and personal belongings among the existing decor. The place felt right, as if it had been waiting for her. It was only on her third night in the cottage that Eleanor noticed something unusual. A small door, no larger than a bread box, set into the wall of the living room. It was painted the same color as the wall, its outline barely visible unless the light hit it just so. Curious, she examined it more closely. There was no handle, no obvious way to open it. When she pressed against it, the door remained firmly shut. Probably an old dumbwaiter or laundry chute, she reasoned, making a mental note to ask the landlord about it. That night, Eleanor dreamed of the small door. In her dream, it swung open silently, revealing not a shaft or compartment, but a tunnel that seemed to stretch endlessly into darkness. From that darkness came a sound, a soft rhythmic tapping, like fingernails against wood. She woke with a start, heart racing. The dream so vivid, she half expected to see the door standing open. But the cottage was quiet, the door still sealed shut, barely visible in the pre-dawn light. Over the next few weeks, Eleanor found herself increasingly preoccupied with the small door. She examined it daily, running her fingers along its nearly invisible seam, pressing against it in different places, hoping to find some mechanism to open it. "It's nothing," she told herself, "just an architectural quirk." But the dreams continued, each night the same. The door opening, the endless tunnel, the tapping sound growing closer, more insistent. At the clinic, Eleanor found herself distracted, her thoughts returning again and again to the door in her living room wall. She began researching the history of her cottage, discovering it had been built in the late 1800s by a reclusive doctor who, according to local legend, had conducted unusual experiments. "You're looking tired, Doctor," commented Mrs. Winters when Eleanor stopped by the boarding house for tea. "Not sleeping well in your new home?" Eleanor hesitated, then described the small door and her recurring dreams. Mrs. Winters' expression changed, a flicker of concern crossing her face. "Some doors aren't meant to be opened," she said quietly. "That might be your final rule." But Eleanor was a woman of science, of rational thought. The idea that a small sealed door in her wall could be dangerous seemed absurd. And yet, the dreams continued, growing more intense. She began avoiding the living room, spending her evenings in the kitchen or bedroom instead. But she could feel the door's presence, like a physical weight pressing against her consciousness. One night, after a particularly exhausting day at the clinic, Eleanor fell asleep on the living room sofa, directly across from the small door. In her dream, it opened as always, the darkness beyond seeming deeper, more absolute than before. The pounding had stopped. Instead, there was silence, a waiting silence that seemed to stretch between worlds. Then, A voice, soft and enticing. "Eleanor, I've been waiting for you." She woke with a gasp. The cottage dark around her, and there, barely visible in the moonlight filtering through the curtains, was the small door, standing open. Eleanor froze, unable to move, unable to look away. The opening was a perfect square of absolute darkness. Not the darkness of night, but something deeper, primordial. From that darkness came a scent, sweet and cloying, like overripe fruit on the edge of decay. And beneath that, the sound of breathing, slow and deliberate. "This isn't real," Eleanor whispered to herself. "I'm still dreaming." But the cold air on her skin felt real, as did the racing of her heart, the trembling of her hands. Slowly, fighting against every instinct, screaming at her to run, Eleanor rose from the sofa and approached the open door. The breathing from within grew louder, more excited. She reached out, her fingertips inches from the darkness, when suddenly a hand gripped her wrist. Eleanor screamed, whirling to find Mrs. Winters standing beside her. The old woman's grip, surprisingly strong. "Never open doors that were sealed for a reason," Mrs. Winters said, her voice low and urgent. "That's your final rule, Eleanor, the one you must learn the hard way." With her free hand, Mrs. Winters produced a small pouch from her pocket, similar to the one carried by the Blackwood family. She tossed it through the open door, and from the darkness came a shriek, inhuman and filled with rage. The door slammed shut with such force that the cottage shook, plaster dust raining down from the ceiling. "What was that?" Eleanor asked, her voice barely a whisper. "What would have happened if I'd—" "Some questions are better left unanswered," Mrs. Winters replied, guiding Eleanor away from the wall, away from the now sealed door. "Every family in Eldridge has a final rule, learned through pain or loss or terror. Yours is this: never open the door in the wall." "But what's behind it?" Mrs. Winters shook her head. "Something old, something hungry, something that knows your name." In the days that followed, Eleanor had the door sealed permanently, layers of plaster and paint hiding even the outline from view. The dream stopped, the presence faded, and life in Eldridge continued its gentle rhythm. Eleanor never spoke of what had happened, but she began to understand the town and its rules in a way she hadn't before. She noticed how the Miller family always touched the oak tree, except for the youngest daughter, who bore a scar across her palm. How the Chen family used their back door on Tuesdays, after the eldest son had disappeared for 3 days and returned, unable to speak for a month. Each family had their final rule, learned through suffering, preserved through obedience. Years passed, and Eleanor became as much a part of Eldridge as the ancient forest or the mist-covered hills. When new residents arrived, she helped deliver the leather-bound books of rules, smiling at their confusion or amusement. And when a young doctor came to join her practice, moving into a kata, you notice it first as a stutter in the dark, the lamp by your bed, the hallway nightlight, even the glow from your phone screen, a flicker, irregular and sharp, just before sleep pulls you under. You try to ignore it, but soon, the flicker becomes a warning. Every time the light falters, paralysis follows. Your body heavy, your breath shallow, your mind wide awake but trapped. The world blurs at the edges, shadows stretch and twist, and the only thing that moves is the light blinking in a pattern you almost recognize. Then, a voice, distant and electric, crackles through the silence. The rules are in the light. Watch, remember, survive. You force yourself to focus, counting the pulses, the pauses, the rhythm. A long flicker, too short, a pause, 3 quick flashes, a steady glow. Each sequence is a massager rule. If only you can decipher it. The first night, you miss it. You wake, gasping, a bruise blooming on your arm, a taste of copper in your mouth. The second night, you watch more closely. Long flicker, short pause. A. Memory surfaces. Don't move your eyes when the light is long. You obey, and the pressure in your chest eases each night. The pattern changes. Sometimes it spells, count to 10 before you breathe. Blink only when the light is steady. Remember your name when the light stutters. If you get it wrong, the paralysis deepens, the shadows creep closer, and the cold seeps into your bones. You write down the patterns by day, drawing frantic lines and dots, hoping to crack the code before it's too late. But the rules are never the same twice. The light flickers, the message shifts, and survival depends on your memory, your focus, your will. One night, the light flickers so fast you can't follow. The voice returns. Softer now. If you cannot read the light, you belong to the dark. You hold your breath, count the flickers, and pray you remember the rules for as long as the light shines. There is hope, but if ever the light goes out completely, you know the darkness will claim you, and there will be no rules left to save you. There are words you must never say. Some names are not meant for human tongues, names that belong to things older, darker, and infinitely patient. Ava first heard the name during a sleep paralysis episode. She woke, pinned to her mattress, the familiar terror pressing down. The room was thick with shadow, the air cold and unmoving. At the foot of her bed, something waited, a shape, shifting and indistinct, its eyes like holes burned in the night. She tried to scream, but her mouth would not move. The shadow leaned closer, its voice a whisper inside her skull. "Say my name," it urged, syllables slithering through her mind. She didn't know the name, not at first. But each night, the dream returned, the paralysis deepening, the shadow's whisper growing clearer. On the fifth night, she heard it fully, a word she couldn't remember upon waking, but which lingered on her tongue like a bitter aftertaste. Ava became obsessed. She scoured forums and old books, desperate for answers. She learned about the forbidden name, how, in certain folklore, speaking a shadow's true name could invite it into the waking world. She tried to forget. She tried to sleep with the lights on, music playing, her phone in hand. But the paralysis always found her. The shadow always returned. "Say it," it hissed, "and I will free you." One night, exhausted and desperate, Ava broke. The words spilled from her lips, thick and unnatural, vibrating in the air. The shadow grinned, stretching impossibly tall. The paralysis shattered. She could move. She could breathe. The relief was overwhelming, but the shadow did not leave. It simply stepped from the corner, its form coalescing, solid and real, in the waking world. From then on, Ava was never alone. She saw the shadow's shape in mirrors, in the reflection of her phone, in the corner of her eye. It whispered to her in crowds, followed her down empty hallways, stood over her bed each night. No one else could see it, but everyone felt it, an unease, a chill, a sense of being watched. Ava's friends drifted away. Her family grew distant. She stopped sleeping, but the shadow never tired. She tried to warn others, but the name would not leave her lips again. It belonged to the shadow now, and so Ava learned what the old stories meant. Some names are forbidden for a reason, because once spoken, they are never yours again, and neither is your life. There is a door in your dreams. You know the one dot. It stands at the end of a long, narrow hallway, a door that doesn't belong to any house you've known, with a tarnished brass knob and peeling paint the color of dried blood. You never remember how you get there, only that you're standing before it, heart pounding, the air thick with dread. You know, instinctively, that you must never open the door. You feel it in your bones. Whatever waits on the other side should not be let out. But dreams are strange places. And fear is sometimes not enough. The first time. You were curious. You reached for the knob, fingers trembling, and turned it. The door swung open with a groan, revealing only darkness, a cold, endless void. You woke with a start, cold sweat slicking your skin, the memory already fading. That day, a shadow lingered in your room, just out of sight. A feeling of being watched, of something waiting for you to fall asleep again. The second time, the hallway was longer. You tried to turn away, but your feet carried you forward, inexorable. The door pulsed with a faint red light. You tried to resist, but your hand moved on its own, unlocking the door. This time, something moved in the darkness, a shape, crawling, dragging itself forward. You woke, gasping, the sound of nails scraping wood echoing in your ears. That night, you heard scratching at your bedroom door. Each time you dream, the door is there. Each time you open it, more slips through. A whisper in the corner, a flicker in the mirror, a shadow that doesn't belong to you. You try to stay awake, but exhaustion wins. You try to lock the door in your dream, but the key is always cold and heavy in your hand. Your will drained by the thing on the other side. You beg yourself not to open it, but your hand betrays you, night after night. Now, you see the changes in the waking world. Objects moved, footsteps, in the hallway when you're alone, a chill that never leaves, even in sunlight. Tonight, you know the door will be waiting. You know you'll walk that hallway again, and you know, with a growing certainty, that soon the door will open wide and whatever waits beyond will step through, never to leave. So, when you dream, remember, some doors are locked for a reason, and some things, once let in, can never be sent back. You're listening to Nocturnal Narrative Studio. If these haunting stories filled you with fear, kindly share your own frightening experiences in the comments section below. Keep your eyes peeled for our upcoming episode, where we have even more fearsome and spine-tingling tales planned for you. They say there's a song only heard in the deepest hours of the night, when your body is heavy and your mind floats at the edge of dreams, a lullaby, woven from darkness itself. It comes when you're trapped between sleep and waking, when your limbs refuse to move, and the world feels distant and wrong. First, you hear the melody, soft, haunting, almost sweet, a tune you've never learned, yet somehow know by heart. The room grows colder, shadows lengthen, and curl at the corners of your vision. You realize you cannot move, cannot speak, except in your mind. Then the lullaby begins, each word threading through the silence, each note, a tether holding you in place. A voice, not your own, sings from the dark. Hush now, child, the night is deep, shadows gather. Shadows creep. Close your eyes, and do not fear. Sing this song so I can't draw near. You understand, somehow, that you must sing along, not with your lips, but with your thoughts matching every word, every note, perfectly. If you falter, if you forget a line, if you stumble on a syllable, the shadows will notice. They will draw closer, hungry for mistakes. The lullaby continues, each verse more complex, the melody twisting, the words harder to recall. If you miss a single sound, I will pull you underground. Keep the rhythm, keep the rhyme, or you'll be mine before sunrise. Your heart pounds as you struggle to keep up, mind racing to remember what comes next. The shadows press in, waiting for you to slip. But if you match the lullaby, word for word, note for note, the darkness will hesitate, and with the final line, dawn, will break, the song will fade, shadows flee, and you are saved. You'll wake, gasping, heart racing, bathed in the first light of morning. They say those who fail to sing a longer, never quite the same. Their eyes seem darker, their voices softer, as if some part of them still listens for the lullaby of shadows, hoping for another chance to get it right. So, when the lullaby plays and you cannot move, sing along without mistake. Your life may depend on it. Some questions are better left unasked, yet one lingers in the minds of those who walk the lonely streets after midnight. Who is the man in the hat? And why does he choose to appear only to a few? Legends whisper that to see him is to invite a shadow into your life, a presence that follows, silent and unseen, marking you in ways that can never be undone. On the edge of town, where the streetlights flicker and the houses thin, locals say the air grows colder after midnight. The old mill stands silent, its windows reflecting only darkness. It is here, so the stories go, that the man in the hat is first seen. He stands beneath the broken lamp, motionless, his face lost in shadow beneath the wide, ancient brim. Some say his coat is black as coal, others recall it as gray and tattered, but all agree on the hat broad, old-fashioned, and pulled low. Those who notice him don't realize at first. He's easy to mistake for a trick of the light, a shadow cast by a passing car, or a memory stirred by sleeplessness. But the feeling that follows is unmistakably a chill that seeps into the bones, a sense of being watched, a certainty that something has changed. It is only after returning home, when the house settles and the world falls quiet, that the true haunting begins. Evelyn was the first in recent memory. She had always walked the same route home from her late shift at the bakery, keys in hand, steps measured and confident. That night, something felt wrong. The air was thick and unmoving, the silence too complete. As she passed beneath the broken lamp, she saw him, a tall figure, hat pulled low, standing perfectly still. She quickened her pace, refusing to look back, but the sense of being marked clung to her. That night, Evelyn dreamed of the man in the hat. She stood in her kitchen, the clock ticking loudly, the windows dark. He appeared in the doorway, silent and unmoving. She tried to speak, but her voice failed. He raised a gloved hand and pointed at her heart. She woke gasping, her chest tight, the echo of his presence lingering in the room. Rumors claim that once you see the man in the hat, he follows you into your dreams. Each night, he draws closer. The dreams begin, suddenly a glimpse of a shadow in a mirror, the outline of a hat beyond the window, a feeling of dread as the room grows cold. The figure never speaks, never rushes. He waits, patient and inevitable. Evelyn's dreams grew more vivid. She saw the man in the hat at the foot of her bed, standing in the corner of her living room, reflected in the glass of her oven. She stopped sleeping, afraid of what waited in the dark. Friends noticed the change, her eyes ringed with exhaustion, her hands trembling as she worked. She tried to explain, but the words sounded foolish even to her. Who would believe in a shadow with a hat? Legends whispered that the man in the hat cannot be seen by everyone. Only those who are already haunted, those carrying secrets or guilt, catch a glimpse of his form. He is drawn to sorrow, to regret, to the spaces in the soul where light has faded. Some say he is a warning, others a punishment. No one agrees on his purpose, only that his presence marks the beginning of something that cannot be stopped. Evelyn's neighbor, Mr. Callahan, was the next to see him. He had lived alone for years, his days spent tending roses in his garden, his nights watching old films in the flickering light of his television. One evening, he glanced out his window and saw a figure standing beneath the street lamp. The hat was unmistakable. Mr. Callahan shivered, closing his curtains, but the image burned in his mind. That night, his dreams changed. He wandered through endless corridors, always turning corners to find the man in the hat, waiting. No matter how quickly he moved, the figure was always there, silent and still. In the morning, he found a single black rose on his doorstep. He told no one, but his hands shook as he locked his doors. The stories spread quietly, passed in whispers at the grocery store, over coffee. In the soft hush of twilight, A pattern emerged. Those who saw the man in the hat began to fade. They grew pale, withdrawn, their eyes haunted by something unseen. Some left town, seeking escape in distant places. Others stayed, becoming shadows of themselves. Legends whisper that the man in the hat feeds on fear. The more you notice him, the more you dream of him, the stronger he becomes. He is patient, waiting for the moment when you are too tired to run, too weary to resist. In the final dream, he steps from the shadows and stands at your side. Those who reach this point rarely speak of what happens next. Evelyn's dreams reached their crescendo on a night heavy with rain. Thunder rattled the windows, wind howled through the trees. She lay in bed, eyes wide, waiting for sleep to claim her. When it did, she found herself in the bakery, alone, flour dust swirling in the air. The man in the hat stood behind the counter, his face still hidden, his hand resting on the register. She tried to run, but her legs would not move. The man in the hat lifted his head, and though she could not see his features, she felt his gaze pierce her. He raised a finger to his lips, a silent command. She woke screaming, heart pounding, the taste of fear bitter on her tongue. The next morning, Evelyn left town. She did not say goodbye. Her apartment stood empty, the only trace a single black feather left on her pillow. Mr. Callahan's garden withered. He no longer tended the roses, no longer waved to neighbors. He was seen less and less, until one day he, too, was gone. His house stood silent, windows dark, a wide-brimmed hat resting on the porch swing. Some say the man in the hat is still seen on the edge of town, standing beneath the broken lamp, waiting for the next soul to notice him. Others claim he moves from place to place, drawn to sorrow like a moth to flame dot. No one knows where he comes from or what he wants, only that to see him is to be marked. Rumors claim that those who are marked can never truly escape. The dreams follow, no matter how far you run. The man in the hat waits in the shadows, patient and unyielding. His silence is heavier than words, his presence colder than winter. Locals say it is best not to look too closely at the shadows, not to linger beneath broken lamps after midnight. Some questions, after all, are better left unanswered. As the night deepens and the wind stirs, a new figure walks alone, unaware of the eyes watching from the darkness, and somewhere beneath the brim of an ancient hat, a faint smile forms, knowing another dream will soon begin. There is a reason some people drape their mirrors at night, a reason old stories warn against looking into glass after dark. For what is a mirror but a thin, shining skin between worlds, a place where shadows might gather and eyes not your own might stare back. Every night, as she prepared for bed, Leela avoided the old mirror in her room. It was tall, framed in tarnished silver, and had been there since she moved in, a relic left by the last tenant. By day, it reflected only dust, motes, and sunlight, but by night, it seemed to drink in the darkness, its surface deep as a well. Leela suffered from sleep paralysis. She would wake unable to move, her body heavy, her mind screaming. Sometimes she saw things await on her chest, a presence in the room, but the worst nights were when her eyes, half open, would drift to the mirror. It always began the same way. She would wake, frozen, the silence pressing in. Her eyes would flicker to the mirror, drawn by something she could not name, and there, in the silvered glass, she would see it, a shadow figure, tall and thin, standing just behind her reflection. Its face was a blur, its edges shifting, but its eyes were sharp dark, as void, fixed on her with dreadful patience. The first time, she tried to scream, to look away, but her body would not obey. The shadow raised a hand, slow and deliberate, as if reaching for her, but it never moved from the mirror. It only watched, waiting, when the paralysis faded. Leela woke, gasping, Heart pounding, she threw a sheet over the mirror, trembling. But the next night, the sheet was gone folded neatly at the foot of her bed. She learned the rules quickly, as long as she never met the shadow's gaze. As long as she kept her eyes from the mirror during those frozen moments, it would not cross. She could feel its hunger, its longing to be seen, to be acknowledged. But she forced her gaze away, counting the seconds until dawn. Some nights, she heard it whispering, soft, desperate, coaxing her to look. "See me?" It would breathe, its voice like whined through broken glass. "Just once. Just meet my eyes." But Lila clenched her eyelids shut, praying for morning. One night, exhausted and careless, her gaze slipped. Her eyes met the shadows in the mirror. For a heartbeat, the world went silent. The shadow smiled, its mouth a slash of darkness. It pressed its hand to the glass. A matching chill touched Lila's back, icy and sharp. She felt herself slipping, as if being pulled into the mirror's depths. With a surge of will, she tore her eyes away. The paralysis broke, and she woke sobbing, her skin cold where the shadow had touched her. From that night on, she covered the mirror with heavy cloth, taping the edges so it could not be moved. She never slept facing it, but sometimes, in the hush before dawn, she heard fingernails tapping on glass. Sometimes, she dreamed of dark eyes watching from the other side, waiting for her to look again. For the mirror remembers, and so does the thing inside. Survival, Lila learned, is simple. Never meet its gaze. Never let the shadow know you see it. And never, ever let the mirror catch you looking back. Hospitals are never truly quiet at night. Even when the halls are empty and the lights are dimmed, the air hums with distant beeps and muffled footsteps, echoes of life and loss. But sometimes, when sleep is thin and fear is thick, something else moves through the wards. They call her the night nurse. No one remembers her being hired. No one sees her arrive or leave. Yet, patients, especially those alone in their rooms, speak of her visits in whispers, their eyes wide with memory. It happens when sleep is a struggle and exhaustion finally wins. You drift off, only to wake with a jolt. The room is the same, yet different, heavier, colder. Your body won't respond. You try to move, to call out, but you are frozen, caught in the grip of sleep paralysis. That's when she appears. A nurse in an old-fashioned uniform, face half-shadowed by the brim of her cap. She glides to your bedside, her footsteps silent, her presence impossibly real. She leans in close, and her voice is soft but urgent. She recites the rules, one by one, each word a thread, binding you to the waking world. Do not close your eyes for too long. The shadows grow bolder when you cannot see. Do not listen to the voices in the corners. They will try to trick you into letting them inside. If you feel a weight on your chest, do not struggle. Breathe slowly, and it will pass. Do not look at the clock. Time is different here, and you may not like what you see. Above all, do not speak. The things that watch are waiting for your voice. She straightens your blanket, brushes a cold hand across your forehead, and whispers, "Remember." Then she is gone, as the paralysis fades and you can move again. You wonder if it was just a dream, but sometimes you find a faint imprint on your wrist, a gentle pressure, like gloved fingers, or a stray pin on your pillow, old and tarnished, marked with a faded red cross. And every night after, when you struggle to sleep, you hear her voice in your mind, reciting the rules, keeping the shadows at bay, for as long as you remember them. The night nurse will watch over you, but if you ever forget even for a moment, the darkness will come, and you'll have to face the night alone. You're listening to Nocturnal Narrative Studio. If these haunting stories filled you with fear, Kindly share your own frightening experiences in the comments section below. Keep your eyes peeled for our upcoming episode, where we have even more fearsome and spine-tingling tales planned for you.